Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about Eternals by Neil Gaiman. This is for the assorted graphic novel with issues 1 through 7, and it's actually a retelling of the original Jack Kirby Eternals story. So first, to go into an overview, as I said, this is a retelling of the Jack Kirby version that you may be familiar with. He originally created the Eternals characters in the late 1970s, and in 2021, it actually became a huge Marvel movie that you may have seen. So the story we're going to be looking at today, though, is actually Neil Gaiman's version, the 7-issue miniseries originally published in 2006. So to start with the plot and pacing, the story picks up with Mark Curry, a medical student encountering a strange man by the name of Ike Harris, who is making wild claims that they are both immortal gods and the world is in grave danger. Mark meets a beautiful young woman named Cersei, who invites him to a party she is hosting. At the party, Mark completes seemingly impossible feats and begins to spiral with the knowledge that Ike Harris may have been telling the truth. The Eternals come together through a series of events, but will it be soon enough to save the world from judgment? So now to talk about the character roster found in the story, we have Ike Harris, who you may have already figured out is Icarus, Mark Curry, who is Makari, a gender-swapped version from the MCU film. We also see Sprite, Athena, Cersei, Ajak, Druid, and Zurus. Noticeably missing from the MCU roster are Kingo, Gilgamesh, and Phastos. So now to talk about some of the themes found in this story. Firstly, we have the theme of humanity. So the story examines what does it actually mean to be human? Are the Eternals less human because of their immortality or indestructibility? They've been living as human and have real connections to humanity and the Earth. So the question that they ultimately have to decide is, does their mission to protect the Celestial take precedence? Secondly, we see a major recurring theme of general mythology or mythos. The characters here are inspired by, or in this story have actually inspired, human mythology and history. Think Athena as Athena, Icarus from the Greek myth, Zeus, etc. Mythology is a running theme through Gaiman's work. See American Gods, Anansi Boys, etc. So these stories seem like a really good fit for his general writing style and interests as an author. Now to talk about some of the really good elements in the story. Firstly, I think that the story progression is really great. It's super easy to follow and really captivating throughout. It's also a really cool roster of characters. I honestly think that the Eternals are really exciting and interesting. They're not simply good or bad guys, but they're more so neutral to a majority of humanity's struggles, which might make them a little bit more interesting than a Boy Scout like Captain America or a comically evil villain like Red Skull. I will say that there were actually a few pretty surprising dark turns in the story I wasn't expecting, primarily because we're talking about Marvel. The story actually holds a lot of realism and grit. I also have to say, I think the issue breaks artwork is super cool, meaning because the novel is a compilation of 7 individual booklets, between each kind of story you get a new cover art, and that art I thought was really exceptional. It's kind of like a watercolor inspired, but it has a slightly abstract feel to it as well, with kind of distorted faces, body shapes, etc. Now to talk about some of the elements that I personally didn't like quite as much. So first of all, the actual art style within the comic itself, I don't think it's bad, but it's just not really for me. The story itself is really colorful and bright, but I just don't really gravitate towards the art style that's used. Secondly, the story does feel a bit like a prequel more so than a completed story arc, but that may be more so the intention and the nature of comics in general. Due to the relatively short nature of the story and the pretty large roster of characters, most of the characters don't really get a whole lot of dimension or satisfactory story arcs within this specific novel. To go into my final thoughts, if you're interested in Marvel Comics, if you enjoy the Eternals characters, then you'd probably really enjoy the story. I would say there are definitely major similarities to the film, so don't expect a wholly original story in that regard. But some major elements are changed. For instance, the relationship between the Eternals and the Deviants, and the relationships between the Eternals themselves, which I thought makes for a really interesting change, especially within the dynamics that we may already know or expect. Thank you everybody for watching my third edition of this comic review series. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much. Bye.